Good morning, a new month, a new abstract challenge. My name's Pete, I like pictures, and you can find the abstract challenge on abstract-challenge.tumblr.com, and you can find my photos, the ones that I made, on either of my two blogs on Tumblr, TVOOM.tumblr.com, that is TVOOM.tumblr.com, or TVOOM365.tumblr.com, that is TVOOM365, the numbers, 365.tumblr.com. This month's abstract challenge, May 2019's abstract challenge, is about curves. And let me be honest, I thought a lot about what kind of video I can make about abstract curves photography, but I didn't come up with anything very different to what I did in the past, and I don't want to do the same things over and over and over again. So I thought about why not do something very different today. So not showing you what I did, but talk a bit about a problem that I ran into a lot in the past, especially with the abstract challenge, and that I still run into a lot. And this problem is about, generally speaking, about proximity or distance. And because my approach in abstract photography very often is playing with distance, so getting very close, and sometimes I simply can't get close enough for two reasons. Reason number one is that the minimum focusing distance of the lens that I use is not small enough, or I simply can't get close enough to the object. How to tackle that, what to do with that, that is what I will be talking about in this video. So let's start. Roll the intro. Different lenses have different minimum focusing distances. With some lenses, especially with macro lenses, we can get closer to an object or a subject, right? With other lenses, we can't. This is one thing that bugged me a lot with my Nifty 50, my 50-182, a lens that I love, that I really love. But the problem with that lens is that I simply can't get close enough in a lot of instances. So what to do about that? If you have the same problem with your lenses, then, well, I made a video or two videos, I think, or one video, no, two videos about that already. One solution is to get a set of macro tubes or macro extension tubes like this set, and I hope they're in there. Yes, they are. So what do these things do? The macro tubes, the macro extension tubes do one thing: they reduce the minimum focusing distance. So if you put 1, 2, or 3 of these tubes between your camera's body and your lens, you can get closer. And the more you have, the closer you can get. So this is a really cool way and a really, really affordable way to not only get closer, but also to transform your already existing lenses into macro lenses and real macro lenses. What is the definition of macro lens? A macro lens is first and foremost always, a real macro lens is always a prime lens. So that is the thing. But the cool thing is about these macro tubes, you can even transform your zoom lenses into macro lenses. So cool thing, right? The next definition or what a real macro lens does is to they have a magnifying factor of 1:1, meaning if you are at minimum focusing distance, the size of the object on the sensor of your camera is exactly the same size as this object has in reality. So if you're taking a photo of a object that is half an inch long, right, and you're at minimum focusing distance, the projection of that object on the camera sensor is also half an inch. So really cool. That is well, I have to correct myself. That the magnifying factor is at least 1:1. with a macro lens, real macro lens. Some macro lenses even blow it up a bit more. So really cool thing. And macro, they're lenses that have macro modes. They're called macro modes. They sometimes have, now I have to get it right because my math is really, I'm really terrible in math and really with numbers, I'm really terrible. So they have a magnifying factor of 2:1 or 4:1, meaning that the object is 4 times as big in reality as it appears on the sensor. So it's just half as big on the sensor, or even a quarter as big on the sensor, and that still already counts as a macro mode. If you want to avoid that, or if you want to get closer, let's put it that way, macro tubes are a really great and really affordable way of getting closer. There's one thing, and I mentioned it in the video that I made already, but get sure that you get a set of macro tubes with contacts so that the camera can communicate with the lens. There's one big downside these tubes have, and it's a really big downside, and I have to put that in right. The downside is that you will lose the ability to focus to infinity. So you only have a very, very narrow range or shallow range in which you can really focus. So a real macro lens gives you the possibility to really focus from the minimum focusing distance to infinity, which even makes macro lenses to great lenses for, say, portrait photography. I once borrowed a 60mm macro lens, and 60mm on my crop camera are about, I think, 90mm. So really can get really close, and it's an amazing portrait lens. And the 80mm macro, I think there's an 80mm macro. I know there's a 100mm macro, at least from Canon. They are also great portrait lenses, so you can use that. It's not possible with macro rings. So with that having said, that is one possibility. Another possibility to get closer is something that is really, really frowned upon by professional photographers, or photographers who think they're professionals, or photographers who think they're great photographers, and that is cropping. Because you don't crop, right? That's bad style. Cropping in camera, that's how to do it. Always crop in camera. While I agree that it is definitely something that will give you the best possible quality, and it's also a great exercise in shooting more consciously, to really learn the craft of photography. And I use the word craft and not the word art, because these are very different things, and that a lot of people confuse. Art is not craft, and craft is not art. Art can be craft, and craft can be art, but it does not have necessarily to do with each other. So with that having said, cropping in camera, or doing everything possible in camera, is absolutely a great way to improve your photography, both on a technical level, because you will end up with higher quality photos, no question about that. And it will also give you more understanding and more feeling for photography. So as I see it, and that's the way I always approached photography. You can disagree, of course. If you disagree, please send me comments, right? As I see it, everything that is done later, no matter if we're talking about analog photography and doing stuff in the darkroom, right, or in well, printing is also darkroom, right, or when we're talking about, or later, right, cropping. You can crop if you make a print of your photos, and cropping the print later, why not? I'll be elaborating on that a bit later. Or whether we do this stuff on the computer, in Lightroom, in Photoshop, in whatever's out there, Affinity, there are all sorts of software out there. That is always something to add to that, or something that we can do in camera. That's the way I always approached photography, because my photos, many of them that I show wouldn't be possible with the camera alone, because that's how I like it. You can like it, or you don't have to like it, whatever, right? There are things that can't be done in the camera alone, and I don't want to be restricted by what my camera can do. So sometimes we simply can't get close enough to get the crop we want, especially when we shoot a lot with, like I do, with prime lenses that have just one focal length. So like the lens that I love, my 24mm 2.8. This is usually my always on lens that I have on my camera. And it is a comparatively wide lens, even on my crop camera. So sometimes I can't get close enough because I simply can't go close enough to what I want to take photos of. Right? If there's a fence or a wall or whatever, or so this is a problem. And since I'm a pragmatist, and since our cameras usually, unless you have a camera that is like 15 or 20 years old, digital camera, 15 or 20 years old, they have enormous resolution. So there's no problem cropping in. So why not do that? Why lose the shot, right? And this comes, and this also has to do with what I said in the beginning, that in abstract photography, I did that a lot, and I will do that a lot, continue doing that a lot, want to get closer. And if I don't have my macro rings with me, or here they are, my macro rings with me, I simply can't, right? So I take a photo a bit wider, or a bit further away, so that it can get everything in focus that I want to get in focus, and then crop in later. There's another thing, two things I want to mention. That's already too long, the video, I know, but two other things that I want to mention. Number one is that we don't need to stick to the aspect ratio that our cameras provide, right? Especially, and that's the cool thing, and that's what people did a lot, at least people that I know, or do a lot with analog photos, right? Analog photos, prints, right? Why not crop them? Use unusual aspect ratios, not the classic 3:2, or with smartphones, a lot of people shoot 16:9 because it's the video aspect ratio, or aspect ratio used a lot by video. So why not really use extreme aspect ratios? We know that there was, in the beginning of Instagram, Instagram was famous or infamous for their square pictures, right? And this is what most people stick with square and 3:2 or 2:3, and some people shoot 16:9. So why not use other aspect ratios that fit what we want to show? Why not use something like really high and not very wide for showing something that is really high? So playing with that is a really that would be a challenge, definitely a challenge for me, because I have a hard time doing that. So I will do that. I will try to do that a bit more in the future. And another thing, last thing before I stop this video, I talked a lot or too much already. There's one thing, if we this is because of prime lenses, and a lot of people say prime lenses made them become better photographers, not only because many prime lenses provide a much higher image quality. And I love my 50mm prime lens. I love my 24mm prime lens, and I have a an M42, I think 37.5 prime lens. I haven't been using that too much, but I also really like that, and I have to use that much more. So what's the deal with that? Why does it, other than the picture quality, why does this, or can this make us better photographers? Because it makes us more conscious. Every focal length has a very specific effect. So shooting with 24 millimeter has a different effect than shooting with 50 millimeter, has a different effect than shooting with 80 millimeter, with 100 millimeter, 300 millimeter. And even if we take the same photos in terms of, let's say, very simple example, there's a subject that I shoot filling the frame. So keeping the aspect ratio, have a subject filling the frame. If I use different focal lengths and always fill the frame, right? Always keep the aspect ratio. These photos will have different effects on us. And that is, I think, something that we all should play around with much more. The thing is, when we have zoom lenses on our cameras and we want to fill the frame with a certain object, right, or subject, then we usually zoom in. Why not play around with, and I will not, I was tempted to show you some examples. No, I want you to try that yourselves. I want you to try that yourselves. So go out, take a zoom lens, and take photos of objects, right, filling the frame. Or not necessarily filling the frame, having the same size on the photo, but doing that with different focal lengths, so that you have to move in or move out with your camera, and compare what the effect for yourself is. So becoming more conscious of the different effects of different focal lengths. So this is my task for you if you want to join. And now I talked a lot already, so 15 minutes talking already. And the intro before that, I guess this is a long video. So bye-bye till next time. I hope the sound quality was okay in this one. I used a different microphone than usual because I'm currently rearranging everything, especially for sound recording. So this one's for today. Bye-bye till next time.